Welcome to another episode of the Swords and Sports Podcast. One man's journey to read 52 fantasy books in 52 weeks and create 52 podcasts documenting the experience. I'm your host, Mike Mogues, the man embarking on this journey, and it's a celebration because it's the 100th episode of the Swords and Sports Podcast. That is absolutely insane. I can't believe how far this show's come in 100 episodes, and think about it, in another 100 episodes, who knows where we'll go. Granted, I still haven't interviewed Brandon Sanderson. I thought after 100, maybe that was a possibility. But I interviewed someone who was interviewed by Brandon Sanderson. Shout out to Nick Martell. So that's basically like interviewing Brandon Sanderson. So let's call that goal complete. As a quick self-promo, you can find this podcast on all your podcast listening platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the other ones. Still, after 100 episodes, I don't know what the other streaming platforms are for podcasts. And I think I buried the lead here because as a celebration for the 100th episode, I have another incredible author on the show. This time, it's the one and only Jeffrey Speight. He's here to talk about his book, Paladin Unbound. A thrilling tale of a half-orc that fucks people up. That interview's coming up after the book announcements and book details. If you're looking for announcements, follow the Twitter account, follow the Instagram account. They're both at Swords and Sports. Pretty simple. Let's get into these book details because I can't wait to hear from Jeff. The book's Paladin Unbound. As I said, the author's Jeffrey Speight. The series is the Archives of Allevium tale. This is book 1. It was published July 1st, 2021, so a super recent pub. The paperback is 334 pages, and the publisher is Literary Wanderlust. Oh my god, I'm like indigestion over here. I'm so excited to be on the 100th episode. I'm so excited to have Jeff on the show that like my body is physically rejecting it. It's so much adrenaline pumping through that it's just killing me. As a spoiler warning, this podcast contains spoilers for Paladin Unbound by Jeffrey Speight. So if you haven't read the book yet, go on Amazon right now. Unless it's Amazon UK, we talk about that in the book because it's a pain in the ass. But also go there. Go buy the book. Go buy the audiobook. Listen to the audiobook while you're reading the book. See if you can keep up at the same speed. You'll get super fast at reading and you'll get double understanding. And then when you listen to this podcast, you'll be like, it all makes sense. So without further ado, Jeffrey Speight. It's the 100th episode, which I was just reminded of. No, I'm kidding. It's the 100th episode. I'm super excited to be joined by the one and only Jeffrey Speight. He's here to talk about his book, Paladin Unbound. First off, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Glad to be here. Congratulations on 100 episodes.
Oh my God. Thank you for joining me along this journey. Your day job is a portfolio manager. I have almost all of my net worth tied up in Bitcoin. When can I retire? Yeah,
it's if you've made that trade over the last few years, you're in good shape.
It wasn't at the right time. You're a portfolio manager with a degree in archaeology, and you like fly fishing, and you moonlight as a fantasy author. Are you just trying to pick the most unconnected things to be into?
Yeah. So, it's a kind of an interesting path, I guess. In college, I was my first major was economics.
Okay. And well, now I see where that comes in.
Yeah, I always had this love of history and cultures and all that kind of stuff. And so I picked up a second major in anthropology with a focus in archaeology and had some fun doing that. And then towards the end of college, I had to figure out which way I wanted to go with things. And I chose the economics route and went and got my master's in economics and went into investing. So in terms of fly fishing, that's something that predates all of it. That goes back to being a kid and growing up on Long Island and, just getting out fishing and learning how to fly fish when I was in probably early high school or something like that. And really just fell in love with the sport. So.
Wait, I didn't know you're a Long Island kid. Where from?
Yeah. Baldwin and then Rockville Center.
Oh my God, I'm from Glen Cove. So.
All right.
Look at that. Long Island producing the best fantasy talent this side of the ocean. I think our Canadian friends
would accuse me of that. So
you have Oh, this was the worst question I had. So let's get this one out of the
Okay.
way.
Question.
Why do they call it fly fishing? You're not flying while you're fishing.
Very true. It's because you're casting a fly. The lure itself is made to emulate the mayflies and everything that the trout are eating, and so the lure itself doesn't have any weight. So you're actually, the line itself has the weight. So you're casting the line, and the fly just kind of follows afterward. And so you're actually casting the fly, and so it's fly fishing.
That question was so dumb. I just debated looking it up myself. And then I thought, you know what? Maybe Jeff will give me a serious answer to
Well,
what
there you
it
go.
has to be a dumb question. Um, you had, I don't know if this is intentional or unintentional, but I found it pretty funny. You had some funny acknowledgments where you both thanked your family members and then single-handedly took shots at all of them.
A couple, a little bit of fun.
I know no parent ever claims to have a favorite child, but in your acknowledgments, you clearly thank Wyatt more than the rest of them. How did they feel about it?
Well, they were okay with that. So the way Paladin Unbound came about was I made a Dungeons and Dragons campaign to teach Wyatt, who's my oldest, and then Owen and Henry, who are younger than him, to play a game that I grew up loving. And it just so happens that some of the characters that Wyatt created, he was a little more advanced in that whole part of the process and stuff like that, and more into it just in general at his age and everything. And so he was a big part of kind of helping me kind of put the world together and some of the character development and stuff like that. And it was kind of a fun thing to go through. I had no idea it was going to turn into a book at the time. It was just something we were doing for fun together, just as a family. And so he definitely deserves special mention just for some of the extra work he put in on the whole thing. So
I know it was like done sweetly. It just made me laugh because I had to turn it into something evil.
well,
You
and even the in the beginning when I dedicated the book to the boys, and I basically said, I probably wouldn't have ever written this book if it weren't for you, but I would have finished it a lot sooner if it, if I didn't have you, because with kids, you're constantly distracted and running around taking care of them and putting them first, and so your secondary or tertiary hobby gets put to the wayside for quite often. So
I also had that written down. I also found that funny. I thought about this and I was thinking about you created this world for them, right? And you have this game and you guys are all playing it together. And I remember being a kid at that age. I just was always ready for what's next. But you had invested a ton of time to the point where you wound up writing a book about it. At
yep.
any point did you think they're gonna regret ever wanting to move on from this story because it's fucking great as you were writing the book?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny because the campaign itself didn't last all that long. For the exact reasons you said, they're like, okay, well, let's go play another campaign. And I'm like, I just built a whole world for you guys and did all this stuff and, created all these characters and all this interesting stuff. And they were kind of just, let's go on to the next thing. We've played these characters 4 or 5 times, I want to do
Right.
something different. And so I was fine with that. But at the same time, I was like, I spent a lot of time doing this and I loved some of the characters that I had created along the way. And so I figured, why not, mess around with a little bit and see if there's more to this than just a D&D campaign. And so I started writing what became Paladin Unbound, and it all started, the campaigns kind of started with them finding this half orc laying in the middle of the road unconscious, and that became Umra, and the story kind of developed around him and that little plot point in the beginning of our campaign.
This is what I believe is the mark of good fatherhood, is someone who takes these things super serious to try to make it as fun as possible, but there is always that disappointment when they were ready to move on.
Oh, definitely. So maybe there's a little bit of me getting back at them for that by writing the book.
There you go. Look at that. And was part of that getting back? I believe it's a picture of you and your son like outside doing like a book signing.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was Wyatt, and he had a fun time. We were at local bookstore here in Fairfield, Connecticut, and he just wanted to hang out with me while I was doing it, and spent a good chunk of the time there with me, and so it was fun.
I think
He wasn't forced.
he really didn't look forced in that picture. I know if my dad tried to make me do anything at that age, I would have been like, nah.
Yeah, 14's a tough time to be, stuck around your dad in public at any point, so.
Unless you're the reason why unless you're the reason why you got that extra thanks in the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it true? I saw this. You tweeted this. Is this true that you're wildly popular in the UK?
No, I'm not wildly popular anywhere. The book has gotten a very nice reception. Some really good reviews and everything, and there's a great book community, for fantasy on Twitter that I couldn't be more thankful for and everything. And so it's been off to a good start for an unknown independent author who's publishing his first book at 47. And it's been good, but I'm definitely not wildly popular in the UK. That was a joke, which a lot of my tweets and stuff like that you'll see are meant in jest.
I think you're popular in the UK. Let's not. So you published
Amazon would probably argue with you on that.
Amazon doesn't think anyone's popular. They don't care who you are.
The link to Paladin Unbound's paperback was broken until a week ago. So from July 1st launch, there was no working link on Amazon UK to Paladin Unbound's paperback edition until the audiobook came out, and then they fixed that link magically after pleading with them for months. And so yeah, it's obviously not a very high priority at this point for them.
I personally believe that even George R.R. Martin has open support cases with Amazon going on. I don't think it matters who you are. They do not care. So you publish this book at 47, and then you also go to summer camp at 47.
For the first time.
Yeah, what kind of summer camp were you going to?
So Wyatt had gone to summer camp down in North Carolina. It was a camp that my wife was affiliated with when she was younger. Her father used to teach golf there. She was a counselor there, and so there's a long history of the family and that camp. And so Wyatt went down there this summer for camp, and my wife had been asking me for years to go to family camp down there.
Okay.
And I just kind of selfishly put it off for years and years and years. And
no.
This year with everything else that had been going on, I was like, you know what, let's just do it. Let's go down to family camp, and we'll be outside. It'll feel somewhat normal, and we'll have some fun. And so we went to family camp and did all the camp thing, riflery and archery and boating and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun, but it was my first actual summer camp experience. So
that is awesome. I think that she browbeat you into it, and then you had a good time.
Yeah, there might be some truth to that.
I could just see someone like vindictively counting down the hours you spend on your new hobby, which is writing a book, and being like, now it's time to give back.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think that was the case, but
well, it is fair. She is my wife is the first line of editing for my book and everything. She's the first one to read it. She's had to put up with me talking about this made up world I put together for years now. So she deserves credit also. And and if family camp is a way to pay that back in any small amount, then it was definitely worth it.
There you go. That's I like that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
What's the deal with this giant ice wall you climbed in New Hampshire? I just assumed New Hampshire was one giant ice wall in general.
Yeah, it can be that way. And my friend Brian and I used to go up. There's an ice climbing festival up in New Hampshire every winter.
Is that really?
Yeah. And we went up there and did some pretty tall vertical walls and stuff like that, and some stuff that we went with a guide and everything. And, you kind of climb up and scare yourself to death and then, come back down, which is even worse. And so this one was about 600 feet
Oh
and
my God.
multi-pitch climb up and everything. And it was intimidating. So,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
inexperience,
what is the safety system on that?
very, very little. So you've got your crampons and your ice axes and stuff like that. And then you're tied into the ice wall with ice screws that kind of hold you on. And, and you're just basically hoping that the ice screws don't pop out and, you slide, the length of a rope. You wouldn't fall the whole way, but you could fall, good, I don't know, probably 10, 15 feet between points where you're putting in the screws and everything. So,
Have you ever
so
fallen?
it'd be terrifying. Not on something like that. I was pretty cautious, doing that stuff, but I've fallen just in, regular single pitch ice climbing and rock climbing and stuff like that. But that's not nearly as intimidating as the multi-pitch stuff.
No, rock climbing, if you're on a belay, it isn't really that bad after the
Exactly.
first time. You realize
Exactly.
that
You're
you're
just gonna
probably
fall
very
and kind of
safe.
swing for a
Yeah.
little bit. So.
But while climbing a wall where your only hope is some screw that you might have been the one to put in. I don't know about that. You're quite the thrill seeker.
Yeah, that's going back a ways now. I've graduated, past that kind of stuff. It's when you have other people in your life to think about, gives you pause on some of those thrill seeking hobbies, like you said. And so, I've definitely dialed that back. I still would like to get out and take the boys do some more rock climbing and stuff like that, but wouldn't necessarily encourage them to do, the multi-pitch stuff or anything like that.
But what are you going to say when they do it one day? You're going to be like, I did. What can you do?
Yeah, can't tell them no. They can make their own decisions as they're older and stuff like that. And if you've done it, then it's hard to tell them not to do it. But hopefully, share some of my experience with them as they grow up, and they'll make good decisions. So
here's a good decision I think you made. This show is the #1 notorious vegetarian podcast. Shout out to David Ragg, who had some lovely things to say about that. But you dropped the lifestyle after 20 years.
Yes, I did. Yeah, and it wasn't easy, and it wasn't entirely by choice, I would say. So going back, I was vegetarian from my college days, later in my college years, until I was about 40 years old or something like that. So a little over 20 years. And, had some hiccups medically back then, and, had lost some weight and everything, and felt like I needed to regain it a little faster than I was going to be able to with my current diet. And so I started introducing some, more proteins and stuff like that into it to, help me get back on track. And so didn't go back to being a vegetarian, but I'm not a all out carnivore either. That's, needs meat every day at this point, but,
Now
it was a great lifestyle. Back then, no, it's a great question. And back then it was, there weren't as many options as there are today to be a vegetarian.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Now it feels like there's.
You either had to eat naturally or you had to eat basically garbage, and so it was a little bit more involved than today, where there are a lot more options. So it's a little bit easier to do, and you feel like you can do it in a more healthy way and everything. So I wouldn't dissuade anyone from doing it. It was great for a long time, but yeah, I dropped it a while back.
What was the first meat you ate?
It's a good question. I think I started off I was super terrified that I was going to.
I have to imagine the anxiety.
Had some terrible reaction to it, which never happened. I didn't have any problems at all. So I started off with bone broths and stuff like that to try to get my body used to it a little bit. And then I think I don't remember exactly, but I think I just kind of jumped right in and went for a burger or something like that. Jump into the deep end, so
right.
But yeah, I was definitely a little nervous about it, but it all worked out all right.
And you know what? You look great. So obviously it's working.
Well, thank you.
Whatever balance. What the hell is SFF pit? Spiff pit. How
Okay,
do they say it?
so yeah, so it's that is a science fiction fantasy pitch competition on Twitter.
Wow.
And so I when I started exploring how to publish Paladin Unbound, I went the traditional route and emailed a bunch of agents and stuff like that, and got some very nice rejections and all that kind of stuff, and totally fine. And I was looking at other options, and I found this pitch competition, and it was basically you were allowed to shoot out a tweet about your book, and if an agent was watching or an indie publisher was checking it out and they liked it, that means they were requesting you to contact them and give them more information. And so I had done it, and Literary Wanderlust contacted me saying they were interested. They were trying to bring on some fantasy into their stable, and liked the idea, the concept behind the book, of a half-orc protagonist that was a good guy and all this kind of stuff, and it just kind of went from there. And I hadn't heard of Literary Wanderlust before. They're a small independent publisher out of Denver, and so I reached out to a couple of their authors and had conversations with them about their experience and everything, and it was all very positive. And so we had some conversations about it and went back and forth. They looked at the full manuscript and liked it enough to run with it. So
I mean, that had to be super exciting.
it was really exciting. I didn't know how it was all going to play out at that time, and
Of course.
just
A lot of unknowns.
testing the waters. And and they were really enthusiastic about it, and it's been a good relationship. So
what was the tweet? Like, how long did it take you to put together the tweet pitch?
yeah, I had written up like a handful of them to try to.
Yeah, I gotta imagine this is the big moment.
Yeah, it's hard enough to write like the back cover copy for a book where you have to like if I could have written the book on a half a page, I would have probably just done that. And so that stuff's tough for me just in general. And then to get it down to a single tweet was hard. So but it came out, and it was something along the lines, I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it was something along the lines of half orc mercenary, Umar the Peacebreaker, sets off and has to do a bunch of stuff and whatever.
I'm in, Jeff.
Yeah, and they were like, it's enough to be interested to see kind of a synopsis, and I sent that to them, and then they wanted to see the full manuscript to make and they gave it a read through, and then we went from there.
I love it. Do you think anyone just tweets pitches that they don't have any content for?
I don't know. I mean, that could get you into some trouble, I guess. I think most of it, you're, in those competitions, and there's a few of them on Twitter, which, I've seen happen, from time to time, but you're supposed to have the manuscript completed to enter them. And so do people enter them and tweet stuff just to see if it sticks and then try to scramble to write something? I don't know. I mean, I guess that's possible, but that would be way too stressful for me.
That seems like something I would do, and then just hand gibberish. Because I actually want to enter this just to do the pitching part.
Yeah. Well, that's a skill set all unto itself as well. And I'm definitely not a marketing person.
Pretty good though.
So, what? Well,
it worked
in this case. It worked in this case, but I was pleasantly surprised. Let's put it that way.
I always love when someone comes on the show and they say how they're not good at something, but the results are the complete opposite of what that statement is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm naturally a pretty anxious person just in my everyday life. And so like the marketing stuff, it never came naturally to me. Maybe it's easier for me to do it when it's a tweet.
Right.
Than having to stand up in front of somebody and give a pitch or something like that. So, It worked in this case, but I wouldn't say it's a strong suit for me for sure.
Man, now there's an idea. We have people pitch it live and
Yeah,
everybody judges and the Roman crowd decides.
like the Shark Tank of fantasy novel writing. I think we're
This
onto
is
something here. This might be a
honest.
business concept.
We might have to stop talking about this idea on air. Someone's gonna come and swipe this from us. What the hell is a dyed-in-wool fantasy guy?
Well, I think it just means that, big fan of just traditional fantasy,
Right. That
and
makes a
just
lot of sense.
just I my first exposures to fantasy were the J.R.R. Tolkien's and the Narnias and all that kind of stuff, and just I remember watching a cartoon of The Hobbit when I was a kid in the late 70s, and I was just like taken away to this other world and loved it. And so I went from there to playing Dungeons and Dragons as a kid and all that kind of stuff. And so it just goes back to, a lot of the traditional, beginnings of fantasy and stuff like that. And, nothing more than that.
Yeah. I mean, look, whoever said cartoons weren't inspirational was a liar.
No, absolutely. In fact, with all the great content that's coming out now, especially animated stuff that's out, I mean,
Ooh.
there's so much good stuff out there that, I can see how people can be inspired by so much of it. The quality is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I could go on all day about this, but I found some of the recent stuff very interesting. I think that I'd like to see more animation as a medium to get fantasy stories that are probably never going to get a live adaptation done.
So yeah, it's a great way to get it out there, and there's a lot more in the way of adult animation available
Right.
today, and that's really becoming a great way for storytellers to get their stories out there. And so I totally agree. And you've seen a lot of adaptations of video games and stuff like that that have become wildly successful as adult cartoons, because everybody who was playing those games like Castlevania and stuff when we were kids are now grown up and loving the shows and everything. And so there's a lot of good stuff, and yeah, it would be a great way to get stories, fantasy stories out there.
Right. I mean, look, not everything could be live action and not everything should. But that's different.
Great.
That's a different
Yeah.
conversation, maybe.
Yeah.
Listen, you wrote a book. You ready to talk
Yeah.
about it?
Sure. Absolutely.
As longtime listeners know, this next part of the podcast is going to contain spoilers. For first time listeners, buckle up because we're doing some spoilers questions. How the hell did the Brotherhood of Resurrection keep track of the souls they sacrificed? Like the real skill to me seemed to be just the expert level accounting.
It's a lot, right? I mean, it's like every barrel delivered had a number marked on it, and they added it all up. It's something I really didn't explain, but in actuality it was a little bit of that and a little bit of their belief that when you hit the right number, the portal was going to start glowing and they were going to be ready to go, right? And there was a lot of blind faith in that organization, and they were literally just plowing ahead with this plan, not even thinking of the ramifications.
I love this because they needed to get multiple, not just people, but creatures to keep track of these numbers.
Absolutely. They probably had an accounting department somewhere, just tracking it all, and pretty complex project.
That was the most impressive thing to me. They had to get everybody on board for this, because if one guy had a lazy day, they were going to be short. He's like, screw it, I'll just round up.
Yep.
Everybody's there ready for the big bang, and they're like, oh shit, Josh rounded up again.
Exactly. And they've got vampires and witches and all kinds of stuff working for them all across the country and the continent, and they did a pretty good job of getting to the finish line on that thing. So
Hey, they pulled it all together, which normally I don't bring this segment up as quick as I do, but I had to do it. I'm ready to pitch you a novella idea.
Okay, that's usually later in the episode, but I'm ready for this.
Right, because I want to talk about Aram the Soul Accountant. He's
Okay.
fresh out of university and he's graduated with top marks, but it's not a hot job market. And
No.
he sees a mysterious job posting with the BOR, and
Hmm.
then he goes in for an interview, and they say, "Look, you're a numbers guy, you're a counter. We don't have the system organized over here. We need you to count things." And he's like, "What am I counting?" Souls.
I like it. There's a hook there.
There you go.
All right. I'm gonna write that one down. I'm gonna,
All right. No one ever does. All right. Okay. Also, were they really that desperate that to hit that 12K number and that they needed to sacrifice his wife, or was she just super annoying? Like, I know he
well,
claimed to love her, but there had to be
yeah.
one other person. He couldn't get
So
rid of one of the
one, right?
mugs.
He's kind of proven the point that he's willing to make the sacrifices he's asking of everybody else, right? I mean, other than himself, of course. Um, and so the next closest thing to him was his wife, and woman he spent his whole life with, and yeah, that one soul. Could he have gotten there without her, without having to do that? Yes, but it was really meant to show just his level of commitment and his blind faith that this was the right thing to do at any cost, and he was willing to do that. And so, not a good guy, but he had his own code of ethics, I guess.
I have this feeling that he's pulling late hours at this point, right? He's got to hit this deadline, right? He's got the
Yeah.
reading, it's coming up. Like, he's got to make this happen.
Yeah.
And he's coming home late. The wife's nagging at him. You're always at work. You're always at work. You're always at work. He's like, just fucking wait. You're going
Yeah.
to regret this.
I was over at the lodge. You weren't even there. You're telling me you're over at the lodge. The lies are piling up, and he just had to take care of business.
Also, if you're on the team and you see your captain, this is your hero. This is the guy you're putting all your faith in, because now you're a mass murderer as well. You've bought in real hard, and you're like, I don't think this guy's really willing to sacrifice it all. He comes in there, he goes, today's the day. The wife going. I'd be like,
Yep.
let's go. You got to be fired
Yeah.
up for that.
Rally the troops.
Killing your wife, the ultimate morale booster. And I'm gonna ask another question. The Bloodbound.
Yes.
Man, has a group ever come in with so much fire, so much hype, and then just falling flat?
Yeah. Wyatt's still angry with me about that whole situation because he was particularly fond of Gory, who is this very unassuming and modestly disfigured half orc, who's really just loyal and kind of doing things for the right reasons, right? And so they come in, they're all geared up, and ultimately, Umra wasn't willing to take the step he needed to take. He hesitated, and it cost him everything that he held dear, right? And so I refer to that as Umra's nudge. And it's been one of the more controversial parts of the book. Some people have loved that played out the way it did. Some it really bothered. Which is good either way, I think. So it was, those characters were kind of made to be destroyed, right? So
listen, love it or hate it, people, it took balls, and you got to respect it, to build up these characters and to just take them right away.
Yeah, I needed that. I needed an inciting incident for him, something that really was gonna push him over the edge. Instead of like, oh, I'm in trouble, maybe I should reach for my pouch and use my paladin powers that I've been hiding for all these years. I figured he wouldn't do that, because he was already dealing with a lot of trouble, just in terms of how he's viewed by his culture, and and trying to just kind of keep his head above water and keep his group's head above water. And so I don't think he would have made that move if he wasn't really forced to. And ultimately he was forced to, and it kind of sets him on a different path, right? So
Nothing like being responsible for all your friends dying to get you moving on a project that you've been putting
it's
off for a long time.
some lessons you have to learn the hard way.
Man, you've got some harsh motivators in this.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
For a portfolio manager, you sure decided to create a main character with questionable money management skills. First, the guy, they're struggling for funds and he buys a mace that turns out to run him a little around, I think around 9% of the advance he winds up with from Lord Morrow. And and then after that, he gets locked into a contract with the king, but doesn't negotiate any terms. The king says, "You're in contract with us," and he goes, "Okay," and then we'll discuss the terms later.
Yeah, so, and that was definitely something I had thought of, and they weren't sure that the king was going to let them go at all, and Umar had decided he was going to go one way or the other, and that he might as well have some help along the way, and the support, if you could call it that, of the king in doing this. And so he was okay with just getting the green light, and he was going regardless. They weren't doing this. He wasn't doing this to get paid. He was doing this to save his world. And he's a pretty selfless character when you think about it. He's not morally gray.
Selfless character.
Yeah, he's not morally gray at all. He has a very strict code of ethics. He's fine throwing a sword around, no problem with that, but only against people that he believes that his God would view as being, terrible people. And so so he has no problem getting rough, but at the same time, he's got a very strict moral compass, and is a really selfless individual. And so he does that whole thing. He goes into contract with the king, but that was a formality to him. He was going to go one way or the other.
Right.
It wasn't to get paid. It was to go and try to put an end to this existential threat. So
listen, existential threat or not, you got to negotiate for yourself.
I hear you. And there's probably a bit of them that didn't think he was going to make it back, so it didn't matter anyway.
Well, those are you've already lost if you go to the negotiating table with that mentality. Yeah. I hope that's not the mentality you had when you negotiate the contract for this book.
No, he had, but you think about it, and he was very unsure of himself throughout most of the book. He was constantly second guessing himself and his abilities to do this and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until some of the other party members started getting faith in his abilities that he started kind of getting a little more comfortable with, okay, maybe I am this person that's supposed to do this, and I can figure this out. And so he kind of grows, during the story in that way. So
it seems like he has some things that happen to him that motivate him. Like his first major motivator is getting shit on. And that's what forces him to start acting, start defending and fending for himself, and knocks him out of his depression. And then second thing that motivates him is his entire friends getting murdered. Yeah, not an easy. He's not got a good life.
He's not had a good life, and whether it was from the start when he was a kid and his father was killed and his mother kidnapped, and then finding his way through this terrible forest and being found by a monk who takes him in and tries to teach him a better way of living and all that kind of stuff. And then he goes out rejecting that and goes out to be a mercenary, and then just really gets treated so poorly by the people in Evelium and stuff like that for being this lowly half orc kind of mercenary. And it's not a good life. And but there's a little more to come in his story yet, so we'll see.
Oh, I can't wait. one of the goals of this podcast is to kind of break that traditional stereotypical view of fantasy, which is this kind of like white European written for, kind of like the basement dwelling creatures with riddled with misogyny, lacking diversity, and all that kind of stuff. What about your books kind of either breaks that traditional mold and offers something different, subverts those expectations, or opens up different fans that would normally not gravitate towards fantasy genre by giving them something different?
Yeah. I think Umra, to start with, is a different protagonist than we would normally
Very
see.
good point.
He's very disenfranchised. He's mixed race, and struggles with his identity, struggles with anxiety. Social anxiety is a big thing for him. He has a couple panic attacks during the course of the book, in social gatherings and stuff like that. And so he's anything other than your, unflappable hero. He's constantly second guessing himself and along the way. And so, I think that he unto himself is kind of different in that regard. And I think you have some other pretty dynamic characters in there that are not your typical white male characters brutalizing everybody along the way. Nayavara is particularly competent,
right,
and does some pretty cool stuff during the course of the book and everything. And so I think it's a pretty diverse cast of characters, and I think it tries to teach you send a message of, our greatest journey in life is figuring out who we are. And that once you understand who you are as a person and you're comfortable with that and you're confident with that, be who you are, and things will work out for you. If you're honest with yourself. And so, it's a message I try to teach my kids. Be who you are. Don't be what other people want you to be. Don't put too much weight in other people's expectations of you and stuff like that. But figure out who you are in this world, and then embrace it, right? And so I think that's one of the messages of the book that I was trying to get out there.
I love it. I think your book does a great job of showing the main character is getting persecuted for half of what he is, and I think that that was a awesome little antidote of the book. I said that Umra was a bad negotiator, but how about this guy, Pel's great-great-grandfather? First off, how did he win the Battle of the Wits against the wizard?
Yeah. So it was, the wizard Aldrasor pops up, in the book, mentioned a couple times in the little sentences before the chapters begin, which are really looks from the future back at the historical tomes of Evelium, right? That were uncovered after some unknown, disaster, right? And so that's the archaeologist in me coming out a little bit. And so Xavier Pell's ancestor had a duel of wits with this Aldrasor, and wins the seeds to these apple trees, and founds this great family fortune on this apple orchard that he creates outside of town. And so he how he did it, we might find out a little bit more about that as
teaser
things unfold. It's not a big part of the story, but there's more to be found out about the wizard that he was involved with in winning that. And so he runs throughout the trilogy a little bit without being a main character in it. So
I'm just saying, if I'm winning anything against a wizard and he hands me 2 apple seeds, I mean, granted,
look what it turned into.
It turned out to be a viable career option for him and his family.
It worked out very well, and it created a vast family fortune based on on apples.
But I don't want the teach a man to fish thing. I want the fish.
I hear you.
You have the two gods in this. I'm gonna butcher their names, but I'm sure you can help me out here. Kemian and Brinthor.
Yeah, Kemen and Brinthor. Yep.
Kemen and Brinthor.
Yep.
And it's awesome. They decide they're like, I'm staying in this world. This world's for me. One of them turns into an awesome dragon.
Yep.
Cool, sick. And the other guy goes, I know what I want to be, an elk.
Yep.
Was he going for the most opposite creature of a dragon?
So if you look at the whole pantheon of that's involved in the stories, Brinthor is the god of water. Kemen is the god of earth. And so they chose two different creatures based on, their affiliations and the powers that they have and everything. And I love the imagery of just the majestic elk, because it's not a fierce creature that's gonna, I could have made him turn into a dire wolf and run off into I wanted it to be something that was more harmonious, where he was, he was just thrilled to be there and just to live in the forest amongst the other animals and stuff like that, and not so much take from the world and all that kind of stuff, but just be a part of it. And so I wanted to make him become something that was completely harmless and yet majestic. And I just thought of that, that imagery of the elk as being a really nice balance of the two.
Listen, you made elks seem badass, so that's got to count for something. I think it was awesome. How did Mathis Nofelt convince someone to come build him a trap door that was activated by pulling a bone?
Pretty nice, right?
Right. That thing is sweet.
So Malthus Nofelt, or the vampire Mantes, was originally in his life Artemis Telsdor, who owned the keep way back in the day. And he's taken on these aliases as he's lived through time. And, Artemis Telsdor was an adventurer, of the, back in the day, who went and fought scary things and monsters all over the place and all that kind of stuff. And he was renowned throughout the land. And he had this big keep built to protect all of his, treasure and all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of that predates him turning into a vampire and coming back and causing trouble, in Evelium. And so, the keep was constructed, a very, very long time ago, before he went out and searched to become a vampire, and then come back and then hook up with the Brothers of Resurrection to, wreak havoc.
I think
ultimately what he, he's immortal at that point, right? And so he's looking back at the way things used to be when he used to, when he was a kid running around killing dragons and stuff like that. And he's like, I kind of wish it was like that again. I want it to be wild, and I don't want all these rules and social conventions and all that kind of stuff. And so he just wants to bring chaos back. And so he's throwing in and by doing what he does best.
I just think what a high pressure job that must have been. Like, if you don't do this correctly, you're going to become a part of this throne. So don't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, so it was a nice little a backdoor way for him to escape and get back and forth, to town without being discovered as easily and stuff. So
the first person he dipped out on must have been like, oh my God, what the hell is going on?
Yep.
I think that's everything I got. Where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter a lot. So I'm there at Jeff Spate, and then at Jeff SP8 on Instagram. I've got a website, jeffreyspate.com, and that's where I usually am.
All right, and people could buy your books where?
Um,
Well,
Pretty
buy your
much
book.
everywhere. Amazon is out there. In the UK, the Broken Binding. I'm with them. They're a great shop. They've got some book plates and bookmarks over there if people are interested. And pretty much anywhere you can find books, you can find Paladin Unbound. So
And the audiobook's out, guys, for those who don't want to, those
yeah,
who are looking for the audio version.
that just came out last week on the 22nd. Adam Blanford did a great job with a pretty big cast of characters in terms of making it all flow and giving some fun accents to the characters and everything. So I was really happy with the way that came out.
Really exciting. Thank you so much for being a part of this 100th episode.
Thanks so much and congratulations.
Talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Could I have had a better guest on for the 100th episode? Yes, because it could have been Brandon Sanderson. No, okay. Jeffrey was awesome, and it was super awesome to get the chance to talk to him. I learned a lot, and as usual, the guest carried the show because it wasn't me. I really appreciated him taking the time out to do it. I've got some hot books up to finish the year. Not all of them yet, but for the next 2 weeks, I know what's coming on. Next week, we've got another Spiffbo finalist. It's The Mortal Blade by Christopher Mitchell. I'm super excited to get a chance to talk to him. Then after that, it's, I believe, a friend of many of the authors I've had on this show, Tim Hardy. He's coming on to talk about his book, Hall of Bones, and I'm beyond excited to get the chance to talk to him. Thank you, everybody who's been rocking with me for 100 episodes. This, don't want to talk about how hard I've worked on this, so I won't. I'll just, drop that so you can do with that what you will. But this doesn't happen without the incredible authors who have been coming on the show. This doesn't happen without, everybody's continued support. And I just want to keep the ball rolling. So thank you, everybody. Keep on reading or something. Peace.